It's portal season, and UCF basketball is making moves like Thanos with the Space Stone.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in the Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, making corny Marvel's Avengers references here. Thank you so much for making us your first corny listen of the day. Joining me, as he does every single week, is my good friend Andrew Gluco from The Last Word on Sports. We're talking UCF basketball today. The portal is open, Andrew. We got guys hitting the portal we're going to talk about. We have guys coming in from the portal that we're going to talk about. Let's start with the guy hitting the portal. Jordan Ivy Curry has decided that he's going to hit the portal, although there's a lot of confusion about whether he has any eligibility left. But let's just assume that he does. Is this a big loss for Johnny Dawkins here? We talked repeatedly on this show about having to re-recruit your roster every year. Getting kids to stay has become a secondary form of recruiting for coaches, with so much more power in the students' athletes' hands to transfer whenever they want to. The portal closes on Tuesday, so you have to enter the portal by next Tuesday. Ivy Curry has made the jump to make sure that he's in. It does not preclude him from returning to UCF, but certainly now he's announced that his options are open.
Ivy Curry announced that he was coming back to UCF and then changed his mind. I wonder if someone gave him a call and said, "Hey, why don't you step in the portal? There's some money to be had." Not unprecedented for something like that to happen. So look at what he ended up losing. The team's losing. He averaged over 29 minutes a game. He scored 13 points a game. That's his. Believe it or not, is only his third best season as a college player. As prior year in UTSA, Texas San Antonio, he actually had a better season, but he was more of a focal point of the offense. Obviously, Keyshawn Hall was and Darius Johnson were the main focal points of UCS offense. And truth be told, Ivy Curry was kind of like a poor man's Keyshawn Hall, where he would, try to, outkick his coverage as far as his ball handling skills, play a lot of hero ball at times, and got himself in a little bit of trouble as far as that goes. He averaged at least more than a turnover a game. The last year at UTSA, he averaged over 2 turnovers a game. So I mean, he does generate turnovers against. So when you look at it that way, it's like, well, let it go. But in the end of the day, you need a bit of continuity. And this was a team that was built to compete for 1 year. You had, multiple guys that were in their final year of eligibility, and then everybody left. There's basically no one left on this team. Even players that never played, they redshirted, like Cameron Simpson, he left. So this is a whole new team, being built from the ground up. Outside right now, Mustafa Cham is really like the only player holding over on this team that has played meaningful minutes. Everyone else is gone. And so there's a lot of, stop for a moment and kind of hit the reset button. Hey, if you're going to have to rebuild from scratch, at least look at players that may fit the archetype that you're looking for, maybe a little less hero players, and then, look for players that are a little more well-rounded, and try to find players that can, help run your floor, because you've lost Darius Johnson. So I think you could spin a negative into a positive here, where you hit a hard reset, on this entire program. You've got one holdover who's a young but talented, center, still has some learning to do, still has to work on his game, but a lot of potential there, and you could build around that. So I think UCF can turn this into a positive.
34 games played for Jordan Ivy Curry, 13.1 points per game, 3.3 rebounds, 2.2 assists. He shot at a 40% clip. That is what this squad is losing for a team that desperately needed scoring at times last year, Andrew. Certainly, if you're going to lose a guy like Jordan Ivy Curry with the potential that he had, then you want to add something. I think they did that. We'll talk about that later. But look, I think I'm with you. I think this is both a significant loss, but not the worst loss in the world. And let me explain that. You need scoring, and he could provide that to some extent with room to grow. However, as you pointed out, there were clear downsides to his game for a guy that's played as much basketball as he is. So it's not like you're losing the best player ever in Jordan Ivy Curry, but continuity does matter. So this is going to be a rebuild for Johnny Dawkins no matter what. I think this is part of the process. We saw a lot of guys announce for the portal. Again, later episodes we'll talk about where a lot of these guys are going. But with Nivs, hitting the portal and Jordan Ivy Curry and some of these other guys, and they may not be done with guys hitting the portal here before next Tuesday. You just got to make sure that you're reloading. I was a strong believer that Johnny Dawkins deserves another year to rebuild this, but he's also got to find a way to put together not just a better squad, but a squad of guys that will play better together than the squad he had last year, especially offensively.
Yeah, and that's why you saw such a big difference between the regular season versus the Crown tournament, because you took Keyshawn Hall out of the equation, who was a me player, and then you had everyone else who's basically just a better team, chemistry style team after that. Even Ivy Curry, who as is kind of a poor man's Keyshawn Hall as far as how he played. He was not as a me player as Hall was, but still very much kind of a one-on-one guy, but didn't have the handles and would definitely outkick his ball handling coverage. So again, you're right. It comes back to can we see Johnny Dawkins put together a team that plays as a team, and it's hard when you're constantly having to get these guys out of the portal. Because you're basically you're hitting the reset button. This year is kind of a free for all because of the the changeover. We're assuming that the House settlement will go forward. It has not been approved yet. It's still being finalized. So we're assuming everything's still going forward. That means all these players can get front-loaded deals on NIL elsewhere under the old Wild West system. And so they're taking advantage of that. I think next year you won't see as many guys hit the portal. I think it'll be a little bit easier to retain your roster, and maybe it'll help a little bit with possible protection against tampering and other things, since there will be more oversight by the NCAA of how these different programs are operating.
Absolutely. Look, players on the way out, players on the way in. Let's talk about players on the way in right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Usually, I ask my girlfriend, but sometimes it's not her, and it's Netflix, or it's shopping, or it's entertainment. It's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, guys. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. You get surprising insights all in one convenience and easy collaboration. So you guys have multiple accounts, personal and professional, that you want to track. You can set goals together and stay on the same page. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at Monarch Money and get started today. Again, use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money, code LOCKEDONCollege. That's half off your first year. UCF has picked up John Bowl. He is a Knights. He hails from Oxford, Mississippi. Actually, he hails from South Sudan, but by way of Oxford, Mississippi. But look, not gaudy stats here. The freshman, we talked about this before we started recording. 7 to 210 pounds, from South Sudan. He played in 17 games last year, averaged 1.1 points per game, true freshman, just under 1 rebound. Not a lot to go on statistically here. As a matter of fact, the most minutes he played all year was 9 minutes in a game, but certainly they think that there's something to build on here. If you're Johnny Dawkins, are you making this pickup anticipating exits, or do you feel like this is a good complementary piece to your team that you're rebuilding?
This is a complementary piece. The anticipation is Chom's going to stay. UCF had depth issues. Rokas Jokas was the backup center. He ended up getting replaced during the year. He had also some injury issues. But Benny Williams, who was way undersized, ended up being the second center on this team. So UCF had a center problem. And John Bull actually was pretty highly touted coming into Ole Miss. Rated as the second highest recruit in program history. As far as as a freshman. So I mean he's got some some clout coming in, but he only played average 4 minutes a game. So I mean he did not play a whole lot. So it's understandable why his stats were so lean. But I say lean because the guy's was listed as 7'2", 210. I'm 215. I weigh more than this guy. He needs to put some meat on his bones, or he's just going to get absolutely like curb stomped by some of these physical big men out there. I mean, granted, he probably look at a guy like Hunter Dickinson. He's also 7'2", if I recall, but obviously a much bigger frame. So Bull's going to have to find a way to either get some meat on his bones or change his game to be able to handle going up against strong guys in the post. Mustafa Cham, he's kind of lean when you look at him too, but that's something that they're going to work on with him as well. But again, this is a depth pickup. The plan is not to have Bull start. He's definitely a guy off the bench, but this would definitely be an upgrade. And if you really want to cause problems, put them both on the court at the same time and have a twin power thing. That would be entertaining, to say the least.
Okay, so it should be noted, Bowl is transferring from an Ole Miss team that was in the Sweet 16. So they were a Sweet 16 team. They flopped there, as they do so often because they're Ole Miss. But look, it came from a pretty good squad. The SEC touted, I think, like 8 or 9 teams that made the Sweet 16. It was a remarkable run for that conference. And so you're going to have attrition come from a lot of these schools that are somewhat stacked with talent. And if you're UCF, you got to be in a position to pick up guys like this. I see John Bowl as a developmental project. They're going to have to do some work with this kid, to get him into being a productive player in the Big 12. The talent is there. The measurables are there. Like you said, get him in the weight room, put a little bit of weight on him. And then what is his role there? Can he be a scorer for you? Right. Because Mustafa Cham can score. Right.
He's just a better player.
Yeah. Right.
Here's the thing, when he was in high school, Bull, averaged, 10 points and just shy of 10 boards. UCF had Taco Fall and developed him over multiple years. And towards the end of his career, he played for Johnny Dawkins. So Dawkins knows how to deal with big men, because he worked with Fall and you had to basically use broomsticks for this guy. So I can see them, converting some of that knowledge here. But just having Bull on the floor, as long as his endurance is good, he stays out of foul troubles. He alters the game. He takes away the inside just by his presence and forces teams to change their tactics and have to beat from more of the outside. So there's also a strategy component there. So yeah, you're right about needing to develop some developing get some size, box out power, maybe work on the shot a bit. I mean, Cham has, the dead art of the long range jumper.
Okay.
There's no reason.
Both corny today.
Yeah, seriously. obviously they want Bowl to one day maybe be like that. I don't think he's going to be, but they realistically can move a guy like Chom to the 4 and put Bull at the 5 for small stretches to really throw off teams. Just have a little fun with this.
Yeah.
You're going to have opportunities, especially early in the season, to experiment. I would love to see a Twin Tower lineup out there, just to throw things off, because you're an opponent. How do you game plan for that? How do you problem is Chom can hit a 3. So, you can move him outside. Well, he also, no one can, power forward is not going to be able to, completely face guard him. So you're going to have some matchup issues. And there's a lot of possibility here. And, the mad scientist part of me actually is kind of excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think maybe you study how Michigan used their 2 big men last year. They had the Twin Towers there that they raved about and were fairly effective most of the season. They met their end versus Auburn in the Sweet 16. Auburn had an answer for those guys, but they do create matchup problems. And, it'll be interesting to see what kind of chess Johnny Dawkins can play, retaining Mustafa Cham and then getting a guy like John Bowl and possibly mixing up those lineups to create matchup nightmares and mismatches for teams. Look, John Bowl, you are a UCF Knight, but he's not the only one. We have another brand new UCF Knight that touts some gaudier stats, and we're going to talk about him right after a quick word from her sponsors. This episode of Locked on UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. What time is it? Game time. And there's nothing like the atmosphere of the NBA playoffs. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's an electric arena with Game Time, you can be part of it without stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is high. Prices on the app usually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Here's why I use Game Time. Priority last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% at the last minute, and all-in pricing means no surprise fees. If you've ever gone through this, you know what I'm talking about. You check out, and suddenly there's $50 more on there. You got ticket fees and fees and dock fees and all kind of fees. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, low prices, guaranteed. What time is it? Game time. Jamaica Stillwell has joined the UCF Knights. Jamaica Stillwell, you are a UCF Knight. He joins the Knights from Milwaukee and touts some gaudier stats. He averaged a double-double for the season, 13 points, 10.7 rebounds, 1.4 assists on the season, Andrew. They made it to the quarterfinal of the Horizon League Championship where they were ousted by Oakland. Jamaica Stillwell is a UCF Knight. If he can turn in 13 and 10, certainly Johnny Dawkins is going to be really happy with Jamaica. I think there's room to grow there for him in watching his game and watching some of his tape. There's room for him to grow as a scorer in the Big 12. And I know people are going to say, oh, but he did it in the Horizon League. Look, one thing the NCAA tournament teaches us year in and year out is, to some extent, basketball is basketball, and there are good basketball players in some of these non-power 4 leagues, Andrew. So do not turn your nose up at Jamaica Stillwell. I think he's a great addition to his team. The guy can just flat out ball.
Yeah, I like to point out that Gordon Haywood played for a Horizon League team. I just want to throw that out there. That doesn't mean anything. That's where you are. He comes from the community college, side of things, played there, was a junior this past year, his first year in Division I, played for Milwaukee and had himself a year. He was first team All Horizon and was the newcomer of the year for the league, the Horizon League newcomer of the year. He was on the academic all-district team. So, not only is he a good player, smart guy, and was one of the finalists for the Riley Award, the Riley Wallace Award, which is an annual award for the most impactful transfer in NCAA Division I basketball. That's a word I'm not very familiar with. We never heard of it, really all that much in UCF, but the fact that he got it, or that guy was a finalist for, says something about the impact he had on this program. First ever player in Milwaukee history to average a double-double on the year, and was one of the best, rebounders in college basketball. This, he's a power forward. He's 6'8", 225, weighs more than John Bull, I might point out. But this is a guy who can get boards, knows where to be. That's where Mustafa Cham's biggest problem was he was heavily out of position at times for trying to get rebounds. This is a savvy veteran that knows how to be in the right place at the right time to make rebounds. And that can translate to helping, a guy like Cham learn to do it better. So there's value in this. With the lawsuits that have gone on as far as eligibility of players coming from JUCO level to NCAA. And the fact that right now there's a blanket 1 year extra for the current players that benefit from it. Stillwell is not one of those. However, that's still in process. There's a possibility Stillwell may have more years of eligibility since he was only in the NCAA for 1 year. So, there is some long-term potential here that could or could not develop as a result. But as far as the stuff that's in front of us that's tangible, what's coming up this season, we know it's coming, it's going to be here, and it's guaranteed that he will be, eligible to play next year. There's value in that. He can score, and he knows how to board, and you need some leadership right now. You go with John Bull. He's young. This is a veteran. He's got experience, and while we'll talk about him on a different show, because there's plenty of transfers coming into UCF because they have to rebuild the entire roster.
Right.
This is not the only guy from Milwaukee coming to UCF. I just want to point that out there. So he actually has a teammate coming with him. So now you got a little more continuity there that, okay, well, these guys can work together. Now we can start building something around that and help, build that team chemistry. I see a lot of value here. I think Stillwell was a really good, really solid pickup. He's a 4-star on the transfer portal, coming out of Milwaukee. So I'm really pleased with how UCF did on this one.
Yeah, going back to the comment that I made earlier, in that it's not just about chasing talent, but building a roster of guys that will play well together. Again, as you mentioned, there's a teammate that's going to be joining that we'll talk about on tomorrow's episode, but certainly Stillwell is a key piece in what Johnny Dawkins is trying to do in rebuilding this roster. Look, he's going to have some attrition. He had some attrition. They didn't have the season that they wanted. Certainly, people came through with money to get Keyshawn Hall, Auburn. Pain in our head.
Tell me how you really feel.
and you had other guys leave, but certainly there are good players out there to be had. Johnny Dawkins just has to find them. We know that the changes to NIL are coming, so I imagine that's part of these discussions, at least somewhat preemptively, to say, hey, even though the kingdom is dissolving into the competitive success fund, we have a plan here for you. So come to UCF and we're going to take care of you financially. They've got to get it done. And I think that there's a great opportunity here for them to do that next year. Before we get out of here, I want to get a quick grade from you. Give me a letter grade on these pickups. John Bull, Jamaica Stillwell. We'll start with John Bull. Grade the pickup. A, B, C, D, F.
I give it a B-. Okay. It's a depth guy. It's a project. But there is upside. You can't teach height, and allows UCF to present some unique matchup situations that you can't just recreate. B-. I think if Cham stays and continues to develop his outside shooting, and even just his mid-range jumper. He can, that would really open the door on that. So there's a little bit of question mark there, but generally I like it. As far as Stillwell, I give Stillwell an A, a solid A. Is he a game changer? No, but he checks the boxes on what you need from a power forward. He can score, he can board. He's experienced. He excelled, being, an important guy in the team, getting all Horizon League first team. That checks all the boxes. You need that savvy vet, that can step in. He did it last year with Milwaukee, stepping in first year with the team and delivering. So that expectation now comes to UCF, first year with the team, expecting to deliver. I think it was a solid A pickup, especially when you add his teammate to it, which they kind of improve each other's grades.
Okay. All right. So we got a B and an A here from Andrew Gluchov on these two pickups. If you get more of that, I think Johnny Dawkins is going to have a really solid squad next year. I like it. I like what they're doing. Excited to talk tomorrow even more about what they're doing. Andrew Gluchov from The Last Word on Sports. I want to thank you for joining me. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
You can catch me on Twitter/X or Blue Sky at StatBoyDrew, and catch my work on The Last Word on College Football, a part of The Last Word on Sports family.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of Locked on UCF. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. For your next listen, go check out our friends at Locked on Big 12. You can find Locked on Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And you can find us here tomorrow on Locked on UCF.